All right, let's get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeff Stevens. I'm the Midwest Regional Sales Manager here at Zoeller Pump Company. We appreciate you joining us today for our sump pumps and switch options webinar. Before we get started, I just want to cover a few details. Please note the email address written below the title on your screen. Should you have any questions after we wrap up today, you can send them to webinars@zoeller.com and we will get back to you. Now that those details are covered, I want to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Jeff Stevens. I started with Zoeller in February of 2019. Prior to joining the Zoeller sales team, I worked as a sales rep for Zoeller sales agency in Chicago called Hart, Travers Associates for 6 years. I also held the role of regional manager for TOTO for 1.5 years before that. Currently, I'm Zoeller's Midwest regional sales manager. So now that you know a little more about me and my background, let's go ahead and get started. In this webinar, we're going to be discussing Zoeller Pump Company's sump pump offerings and all the different switches you can use with our pumps. We will dive into how to prolong the life of your pump and also discuss what switches work best in certain applications and pit sizes. All right, we're first going to go over what sump pump Zoeller Pump Company has to offer and the differences between them. Here at Zoeller, we do not take a one-size-fits-all approach. We have many different models which may appear similar on the outside, but they're different internally. The use of these different internal components ensures that we are able to provide customers with the best pumps for their specific application. So like I said, I cover the Midwest for my job, which is a very busy sump pump market. The one question I always get from everybody is, how long will my pump last? What we see on average in a typical sump pump application is a pump lasting around 7 to 10 years. Now, I do not have a crystal ball, and I wish I could prevent people's basements from flooding, but there is no way to tell exactly when it will go out. There are a ton of variables that go into that. However, one thing that is for certain is your pump will fail at some point. For instance, you could have two homes next to each other, and one may last a handful of years, and the other may continue to operate for 20+ years. It all depends on how well that pump has been maintained and how often that pump is called to turn on and off. Many customers like to compare their pumps with their friends and neighbors, but to be honest, it's not a very good judge of quality, as there are a lot of variables that go into how many times your pump will cycle compared to other systems. Though we aren't clairvoyant, we do have some tips to help you maximize the life of your pump so that you get the most out of your purchase. Here are a couple ways to get the most life out of your pump. First is making sure you properly size your pump. As I stated earlier, Zoeller makes a number of pumps that have the same size motor, but they all do different things for different applications. Many customers think that removing the water out of the basin as fast as possible is the way to go. In reality, that is not very good for the pump due to short cycling. If you have too large of a pump for your pit and that pump only runs for a second or two and keeps turning on and off quickly, there is a good chance you'll burn up the pump or the switch. Rapid cycling does not give the pump enough time to reset and keep cool. We want the pump to have a nice long cycle so it runs efficiently and isn't putting a ton of stress on the switch and the motor. Second is making sure you are maintaining your pump if it doesn't see much water in the pit. Pumps can and will seize up if they sit dormant in a pit. To give you an idea, I live in Minnesota. My pump has not ran from the groundwater since the beginning of November. If I didn't have a test in the pump, it would have sat dormant for months, which can lead to issues when it goes to fire up in the spring. What you'll want to try to do and remember is run that pump at least a couple times a month to keep it moving. This will make sure everything in that pump is being exercised and will be ready to go when called upon when the time comes. As I said earlier, comparing pumps with your neighbors isn't a great way to determine the best pump for you. Elevations make a huge difference out there. Water will always flow to the lowest point. If one home is on higher ground than the other, the home in the lower area will have a very active sump pump, which may not last as long due to the pump hitting a much higher cycle count. So if you are in a high spot, we highly recommend exercising the pump every month to keep it ready for action the next time you really need it. And if your pump is consistently seeing water coming into the pit, there's no need to take that extra step. All right, one other way to maximize the life of your pump is to make sure you are properly sizing your sump pit. Unfortunately, many home builders put in a standard size pit on every home before knowing how much water is going to be going into that basement. What we see in the Midwest is a standard 18 by 30 basin in a lot of homes. Many homes we find with the 53 series pump in an 18 by 30 basin receives an average amount of water, although many homes today sit on a high water table, causing pumps to run more frequently. Looking at the graphic, you can see that the M53 with a 3rd horsepower motor will run about 2 times longer than a half horsepower M98 in that size of pit. And an 18-inch diameter pit isn't going to hold a lot of water, so even a 3rd horsepower pump will clear it pretty quick. So when you put a larger pump in a smaller pit like that, it will cause it to short cycle, which may lead to premature failure. One simple thing to do is step up to a 24 by 24 basin. You can see you get about twice as much storage, which will allow your pump to cycle longer when it is on. This will allow the pump to work a little more efficiently and hopefully give you a longer life. If you are in a spot where there's a lot of water, I would always recommend sizing up the basin before sizing up the pump. There are times where you'll need a bigger pump, but most systems would be better off achieving that extra performance by using a secondary backup system in times of heavy rains, plus the protection and power outages for added security. All right, now that we've talked about how to get some life out of your pump, let's go into the sump pump lineup from Zoeller Pump Company. So Zoeller Pump breaks down their sump pump offerings into categories. We have 3 separate levels, which offer an array of features and benefits in their own ways that find you the best fit for your application, depending on your needs. The first category in our lineup, which is in black there, is our entry-level products. The pumps that fall into this category are 70 series pumps. These are going to be cost-competitive pumps with a slightly different build, which we'll dive into further in a minute. The second category, and the most popular by far, is our professional lineup of sump pumps. This includes our 50 series and 90 series pumps. The most popular are the models M53 and 98. Lastly, in the light green, we have our premium pumps. These pumps are when you need the absolute best pump for the toughest applications. They're a step above our professional grade, offering more robust components and a build quality like no other. Stepping up to this level will bring you some added benefits and features as well. All right, in this slide, I have all 3 categories laid out showing their differences. We have the entry level in the black font. In the middle, we have our professional series in the darker green, and then premium in the lighter green. We're going to break these down in detail later, but I want to discuss where you would use these different pump categories and to show you that pump is just not just a pump. There is a wide range of build qualities out there, and we want to give you an in-depth look at what you're paying for. First, we'll discuss our entry-level product. These are going to deliver Zoeller quality with a more economical option. Many of our customers put these pumps into homes where there's not a huge threat of substantial amounts of water. They're not expecting much wear and tear on the components, so going with a lower cost pump might make sense for an application like that. We also see these on budget projects as they need to control their costs, but not sacrifice a great deal of quality. Due to the nature of components on these pumps, you may not get the same amount of life out of them as their upgraded counterparts, but rest assured, you will be still be getting 100% factory tested sump pump that you can rely on. Moving down to the row to the middle, we come to our professional grade category. This is where you'll find our core product that has been tried and tested for decades. These products are what the Zoeller family has built their foundation on, and they continue to grow the lineup today. The products in this category are professional grade in every way. You can see the build quality is upgraded to all new materials, which will allow us to put them in tougher applications so a homeowner can have a peace of mind that their pump will turn on when they need it the most. Many of these pumps are made right here in the USA using majority US content. As a family-owned business with 95% of our products being made in the US using content, Zoeller Pump Company is proud of their American heritage and US commitment. There are a lot of companies that will put the US flag all over their product boxes, but then follow up with that flag with the assembled in the USA printed underneath. When we put it on our professional grade boxes, you can be confident you are buying a pump that has been made from start to finish in the US using majority US content. We are not an assembly shop. Our factory floors are dirty, and we like it that way. One more spot to the right is our premium category. These are built similar to our professional series, except we've upgraded many of the components. We could have taken the easy way out and just charged more for a 53 and give it for a 5-year warranty. That's not what we are about here. We wanted to give the customer a reason to spend a little more so they know they're getting the absolute best sump pump we can build at a reasonable cost. If you live in an area with a high water table and your sump is consistently running, this series of pumps will be for you. These pumps are made to stand up to a lot of demand for a long period of time. We offer our longest warranty on these two pumps. We are confident we can put our best foot forward on the M63 and M95. One thing you'll see out there is a lot of competitors comparing their pumps to a professional Model 53, and all they can talk about is how much water it can move. As I've already discussed earlier, moving more water is not always better. It can easily do more harm than good. If you were to tear some of these competitors' pumps down, you'd find that a lot of their pumps are built exactly like our entry-level units, but they're priced much like one of our professional series pumps. One thing we are not afraid to do here at Zoeller is dig into these pumps and show you the first-hand quality components we put into our builds. People always ask, is there really a big difference between the pumps? Are you just charging more for a long warranty? The answer is simply no. Now, I'm going to kick it over to Zach Cooper, our National Sales Manager. He's going to show you an in-depth breakdown of one of our entry-level products versus our professional grade. Hang with me just a second.
Hello, and welcome to the Zoeller Center for Excellence Training Facility. My name is Zach Cooper, and I'm the National Sales Manager for Zoeller Pump Company. Today, we wanted to give a high-level overview into the differences between our entry-level products and our core product line that we offer here at Zoeller Pump Company. Though both are made in Zoeller factories, and each individual pump is tested to meet its performance curve before going into the box and shipping into the market, the Model 53 is made in the USA. The Model 73, on the other hand, is manufactured in a Zoeller-owned facility in Taiwan. The Model 53 is part of our core product offering. This unit is made up almost entirely of cast iron, which is a great way to pull heat away from the motor and keep the pump cool. All Zoeller pump cast iron is finished with a corrosion-resistant powder-coated epoxy finish to prevent corrosion and rust. All metal components are stainless steel to prevent rusting as well. All of these components play a key role in increasing the longevity of the pump. Entry-level pumps are made from a combination of cast iron and plastic. Our Model 73 does have a cast iron motor housing to pull that heat away from the motor, which is the most important. But it has a plastic cap or top. Plastic can act as an insulator, so it keeps the heat in as opposed to drawing heat out, putting more stress on the components inside of the pump. You can also see the connections in the entry points on our core product line. For instance, when we talk about the cord seals, is much more robust on our core product offering than it is on our entry-level product offering. Let's take a deeper dive and look into the products. All right, so let's jump right into our 73. As we mentioned earlier, we use a plastic cap on our 73. While more cost-effective option, it can act as an insulator when it comes to heat. So as that motor is spinning, generating heat, this can actually keep the heat in the motor instead of pulling it out. Also on the 73, we use a reed-style switch that is operated by a magnet, which again is a cost-effective option. However, depending on the environment that the pump is in, if you've got some hard water or things like that, you could get some corrosion built up on the magnet and then not have that connection that you need there to turn the pump on and off. We also utilize a hollow float design. Again, more of a cost-effective option. The one thing you have to worry about with that is if this were to get a hairline crack or something like that, it could take on water and then it would lose its buoyancy. When we slide over into our Model 53 in our core product offering, we use a fully cast iron cap for our pump, again, thus acting as one large heat sink. So as the pump is generating heat, drawing amps, it helps the heat from the motor housing up into the cap, and then the water around the pump actually cools that cast iron down very efficiently. So we use a cast iron cap for that on our core products. We also utilize a snap action switch that we've been using since the 80s. That's tried and tested over 1 million cycles. This switch is inside the cap, so it's out of all the elements, and then we call it a snap action switch. On our core product offering, we also use a solid polypropylene float so that it can't take on any water if it were to crack or anything like that, so it would never lose its buoyancy. Moving down into the motor housings of each pump, we do utilize a cast iron motor housing on our 73, which is the most important part, as we mentioned earlier. This helps, dissipate the heat from the motor. We do take it a step further than some of our competitors. As you can see, this motor is pressed in. A lot of our competitors will use what we call a squirrel cage motor that's already an aluminum housing that they just slide up in there, thus giving an air gap so it doesn't dissipate the heat as well. The type of motor that we use in the 73, much like any of our competitors, is a PSC motor, or a permanent split capacitor motor. That type of motor design has its pros and cons. The pro about it is that it does draw less amperage than, let's say, what we use in our core product lineup. However, it has to rely upon a starting circuit, which is made up of a start or run capacitor or a relay. And what those type of components don't like is the rapid on and off. So when you're thinking about, especially if you live in an area that's got a high water table, and you're thinking about like the spring when the rains are coming and your pump's oftentimes triggered on, off, on, off, on, off, oftentimes you can lose some of those start components in that type of application. So that would be the downfall of a PSC motor. Also want to make note that we use a vortex style impeller on our 73, which is very good at passing small debris, pebbles, sticks, maybe leaves, anything like that that might be found inside the pit. When we move over to our core product line offering, we do utilize a cast iron motor housing as well, much larger, much more surface area to draw that heat into, to help dissipate that heat. Now, Zoeller actually manufactures their own motor, which is quite impressive. Right here in the United States, you can see we use a little bit larger motor. This is actually called a shaded pole motor. And again, we press this in so it sits very tight up against that cast iron. Again, drawing the heat away from that motor, and then the water that's around that cast iron, cooling that cast iron for a very efficient use of cooling the motor. So the shade pole motor, as kind of mentioned before, the downfall of it is it does pull a little bit higher amperage. However, we are not relying upon any starting circuitry, so it can just be rapid fired on, off, on, off, on, off, and you don't have to worry about a failure there with the capacitor or anything like that. When we kind of move over into the impeller, here we do also utilize a vortex style impeller, similar to our 73, just much larger. I will make note that the 53 actually spins at about half the rate of the 73, so the 73 has got to spin twice as fast in order to move the same amount of water. And these are the differences in the impellers. Moving over to the base of the pump, or the volute, the 73 utilizes a full plastic volute. You can see here on the bottom of the 73, we utilize a 360-degree screening device as this pump sits at the bottom of the pit. And internally, inside of that, we use another 360-degree screening device. Again, we do use a plastic top to this volute. The downfall of it is going to be contractors tightening that discharge pipe down, have a tendency sometimes to over-tighten that, torque it down, and there is potential to get a crack in that where that discharge threads into this volute. On our core product offering, we use a plastic base that has a 360-degree screening device on the 53 as well as internally a 360-degree screening device. Again, it's going to help pass into the small debris and keep the big debris out. Now, we do utilize a cast iron top to that volute so that the contractor can tighten down their discharge pipe and they don't have to worry about potentially cracking the top of the volute there. So you can see there are a lot of differences between these two levels of pumps. In today's market, often you run into imported products that are private labeled under another manufacturer's name. Where at Zoeller, we control our own destiny. When it comes to our entry-level units, we have a Zoeller-owned facility in Taiwan where we manufacture our own products, thus controlling the quality. The 53 is made in the USA, giving us even more control over our design, production, quality, and allowing us to easily adapt to customer needs and market shifts. The 53 is obviously superior to that of the 73, but the entry-level pumps offer a more economical option. There are some areas that may never see water, or the builder or customer may be on a tight budget and they can still get a great pump in the Model 73. Depending on your needs and the needs of your application, Zoeller has the right product for you.
All right, we'll give an overview of the differences between our entry-level and professional product builds there. All right, now I'm going to give you a high-level overview of the pumps which fall within these categories. Like Zach alluded to, 100% of our pumps are factory tested before they ever go into a box. What that means is they're tested to make sure the motors are ready to go and the pump is performing as it should before they make their way to you. All right, first up is our 73 and 75. As Zach said, these are made in our Zoeller Taiwan facility, which have the same strict testing standards as we do here in Louisville. The 73 is the 3rd horsepower offering, while the 75 is a 1/2 horsepower pump. Like Zach said, we do introduce cast iron in this pump around the motor housing to help pull out the heat. And when it comes to the switch, this pump does come with an integrated vertical master switch, or you can also get it as a non-automatic pump and use any other non-integrated switch on it. These pumps are a great economical option for those who want quality pump for the best price, or a home that isn't going to see a ton of water. One thing we always make sure of is no matter what the price point of the pump, we will make the best pump within that price point we can. This pump also comes with a limited 2-year warranty on it, so it does give you a good peace of mind. We now get into our professional series pumps, and specifically our 50 series. So there are a number of pumps that fall within this series, but the one that is pictured here is the M53, which is Zoeller's most popular residential sump pump. This pump will likely work on a vast majority of applications out in the field. With its robust components and simple installation, this is the pump a vast majority of contractors choose out there. So in this pump, like Zach said, you do have 3 compartments. You have a switch cap, motor housing, and base. We do this so you can easily swap out the switch if need be. And we're going to dive deeper into those other switch options in just a bit. But what we do is if water somehow works its way into the switch cap, it should stop there and keep the motor safe. Some other pumps like to utilize a unibody design, so if you're going to ever need to replace the component, you'd have to get into that motor housing, which is full of oil, which is usually making it a much more difficult repair. Where ours, you've got 4 bolts and a gasket, and you put a new switch on top, and you're good to go. This pump steps up in every area from the entry level. It brings more cast iron to the build, and it also bumps up its solids handling capacity to 1/2 inch solids. The 53 is made right here in Louisville, Kentucky, day in and day out. And we produce about 3,000 of these per day. The pump has a ton of options, really, so you can use any switch you want on this. We do have part numbers set up with specific switches in the box, or you can order them separately. It's your call. When we discuss switch options here in a bit, we'll also focus on applications where some switches work better than others. A couple other notable options in the 50 series are the models 55 and the models 57. If you need a pump to handle a highly corrosive application, the model 55 is made for just that due to its bronze construction. And our model 57, although built like the 53, it just adds the cast iron base and a cast iron impeller, which can handle rocks and other debris a little bit better if needed. This is a good option for like a new construction build, which has a lot of debris and other items that get into the pit during the construction phase. Moving on, the Model 98 is very similar to the Model 53, except it gets a bigger motor in order to move more water quicker. So this steps up to a 1/2 horsepower motor. So these pumps are needed in high volume areas of the country. Just keep in mind, as I said earlier, you want to size out both the pump and the basin when stepping up to a larger pump to eliminate that short cycling and potentially premature failure. Just like the 53, you can use any of our switch options on this pump. And now we step up to a 3-year limited warranty. All right, next is our premium product. Model M63 is our 3rd horsepower and the model M95 is our half horsepower option. These pumps are made in Louisville, Kentucky, using a majority US content. I did make mention of the more robust components earlier, but these pumps are the go-to pump when you want the best of the best. They are made in the USA, like I said, right here in Louisville, with an all cast iron design. That includes the base and the impeller, which is a little bit different than our 53. Premium models give the customer upgraded seals to keep water out of the pump. It comes with a more pliable cord for a little easier installation. It adds a nice lighted LED plug. And then the switch is also upgraded from your standard 53 switch. So the lighted plug, although is simple, it's a very effective upgrade. So this allows the homeowner to know if there's power at the plug or not. So if that pump is plugged in and the light is on, that means there's power going there. If it's off, then you have a problem with the power source and not the pump. So an easy diagnostic there. So on the 6395, the switch may look the same as the switch on our 53, but the biggest difference happens inside the switch cap. So the switch functions the same, but we have engineered a way to reduce the heat and friction inside that cap to give the switch a much longer life. So this switch is built to take on a lot of abuse in heavy water situations, and it can handle that quick on and off cycling if you're in a high water situation. Since we have upgraded a vast majority of the components to stronger options, we are able to give the customer a 5-year limited warranty. Again, we wanted to give the customer a reason to upgrade their pump, not just charge more for a longer warranty. All right. Next, we're going to discuss what switch options you have with the sump pumps we just talked about. One thing we know is everybody has a preference in everything they do in life, and pumps and switches are definitely no different. We want to make people aware that they have options when it comes to our pumps. Okay, when I go out and travel, go to shows across the country, we always bring our M53 pump, since that's our most popular model, like I alluded to. It never fails that I get some customers that'll come up to me every show and say, "Hey man, I love your pump, I don't like that switch." So my response is always, well, you know, what switch do you like? So they tell me exactly what switch they like, and I simply respond with, well, you know, you can get a 53 with that switch. And their answer is always, well, no, I didn't know that. You know, they kind of get one track mind thinking that we only have the M model switches, and they kind of you know, start thinking differently when they know they can get that same great pump with a different switch. So with that said, each switch does have its pros and cons. We have tested all these switches, and we also have our thoughts and ideas and opinions on each switch. So we always come back to wanting to give the customer that peace of mind that when the switch does come on, the pump kicks on as well. We may give up some options in runtime with our M style, but we are able to improve the life of the switch. On the right side of the page here, you can see 3 examples of the Model 53 with 3 different switches. So again, the model numbers are below. You can order it with those numbers, and those switches do come in the box with the pump. You can also order them separate as well if you were to be replacing just a switch and not the pump. So, all right, let's take a deeper look into these options and what Zoeller has to offer on the switches. So this is an easy graphic showing you what we have to offer. We will discuss each of the sump pump options in detail. We won't go into the end models. As that is just a pump with no switch, or the WM piggyback switches, which are hardwired directly into the pump. So we're strictly going to be staying on that right side of the wheel. And so these options that I discussed, we're not going to discuss the end models and the WM models. Those are typically seen on commercial applications rather than sump pumps. So we're going to work our way around the wheel, starting at the top, and then making our way clockwise. So we're going to start with the M-style switch first. All right, so like Zach said, this is our snap action switch. It's integrated directly into the pump via the switch cap. So on this switch, there's no adjustability, so there's a fixed runtime. This pump will turn on around 7 inches from the bottom, about 7.25, and off around 3 inches from the bottom of the pump. So this will give you about 4 inches of travel with that float. So this switch with the motor makes it a very reliable solution for a lot of homeowners. So this also allows for this pump to be an easy install, since it does have just one plug and a smaller footprint. So I've heard a lot of contractors say that they prefer it since you can set it and forget it. So we understand some applications and contractors, they call for other switches. So that's why we offer our pumps with all of them. So moving our way around the wheel, we fall into our BN or piggyback switches. So there are a couple different options with this switch. They work a little bit differently, but they install very similar. So first question is, what does the term piggyback mean? So the diagram on the left shows you how it works. So you'll have two plugs, one for the pump and a separate one for the switch. So the switch plug will plug into the wall, and then the pump will plug into the back of that plug. So what does this really do for you? Well, it allows you to test the pump and the switch independently. So if there's a time where the pump isn't working for whatever reason, you can go to that plug, unplug the switch, and plug the pump directly into the wall. And if that pump kicks on and moves water, you know you've got a bad switch and the pump is still good to go. So, like I said earlier, there are multiple types of piggyback switches. The one pictured here on the left is our 53 with a variable level pump switch. So these work a little bit different. They work by clamping the cord around the pipe and letting the gray pill swing up and down with slack hanging from the clamp. So the longer the slack, if you can envision that, the longer it's dangling from the pipe, the longer the runtime. So you can set that wherever you'd like. So when that water comes up and that gray pill starts floating and it goes a little above parallel, that's when it'll kick the pump on, and it should move the water down, and then that switch will follow the water down, and as soon as it goes to that down position, it'll kick the pump off. So with that said, you can see that the runtime, you can set the runtime, which is good. You can make it longer, shorter, however you'd like. But on the flip side, I've seen a lot of installs where you put too much tether on that switch. There's going to be a possibility it could hit that sidewall and never kick the pump on because that switch is not able to cross that parallel level. So there's another issue where if you got debris coming in, whether it be a bunch of leaves, any other type of debris, it can get really hung up on that switch and not cause that float to come up, which obviously won't kick the pump on. So you can find yourself in a flooding situation pretty quick if that float gets stuck down. So one of the other good things though too is you can also set the height of these switches. So depending on where you clamp that onto your discharge pipe. So what this allows you to do is keep the pump fully submerged in water by setting the off level just above that top of that pump. So this allows the pump to stay cool as the water is helping it stay cool as we dissipate the heat out. So this is the ideal situation to help with the pump longevity, but it's not always able to be done in a small residential sump pit. So we've also found that these switches don't exactly tend to last as long as the previous switches I've shown you. So that's another kind of downfall that we've come across. All right, so the next model 53 that you can get here is with what we call a vertical master switch. So the vertical master switch is also a piggyback switch, just like the previous one, which also brings its pros and cons, but they do work a little bit differently than the previous piggyback switch. So instead of swinging out, this one moves vertically instead of horizontally. So with that, the longest runtime you can get kind of depends on how long that float rod is right there in the middle of that switch. So the longer the float rod, the longer the travel, the longer the pump will stay on and run. So you can also put this one anywhere inside the pit, just above the pump if you'd like, or lower depending on your application. So with the float rod, these typically have about 5.5 to 6 inches of travel, which is a little bit longer than our M-style switch. So that's a good thing. Like I said, it'll help the pump run a little bit more efficiently. So this is a very popular option out there. Again, the longevity might be there, but it does give you some good adjustable features on it to set your runtime and the level of the water, your on-off levels. So. All right, so moving around the wheel, we come to our LN float, which is our floatless piggyback option. So this is kind of a one of our best switches out there, very robust. So this gives you the best of all the switches combined, in my opinion. So again, it's a piggyback style, so it's separate from the pump itself. You can install it just like the previous two switches anywhere you like inside the pit. It does bring a longer runtime than our snap action switch, which will help give the pump a longer life, like I said. So the travel distance between the off and on this switch is about 7 inches or so. So it's giving you the longest runtime out of all these switches that we've discussed, besides maybe that pill switch where you can set the tether if you have a big enough basin. But this one's going to be the longest, probably if you're using an 18 by 30 or a 24 by 24 inch pit. So that's going to give you the ability to make that pump run very efficiently and hopefully not short cycle. So how the switch is built is it's made up of solid state parts, which means there's no moving parts within that switch, unlike all the others. So this greatly improves its longevity. Every other switch has a movable part which can wear out over time just due to wear and tear. Or obviously, like I said, the one pill switch can swing out and possibly get hung up while in operation. So another benefit is this switch is sonic welded together, so no water should be able to penetrate the casing of this switch to get inside of it and make it fail. So a lot of people ask, how does this thing work? So there are sensors on that right side of the switch, and they can sense the water level. So when water clears that sensor, it'll know that it's being covered up. So once the water rises and it hits that off in the bottom, and then it goes up, and then it also covers that on switch, that's what's gonna kick the pump on. So if you can see in the graphic there are two on points as well. So for whatever reason, the first sensor is blocked by a ton of debris, or maybe it failed for whatever reason, it does have a redundant on switch just above it, so it will give you that peace of mind that if one on switch does fail, that second one will kick it on as well. So another note to make is that if you do have debris or buildup of soot or anything in this pit, these sensors can read through some sort of debris. So maybe a ½ inch or so or a little more, it will read through that. So if there is any blockage, it will still operate and be able to kick your pump on. So this thing in our kind of R&D lab, we've been able to rate this thing for over 1 million cycles, which is a little more superior than every other switch we've discussed. So we give this switch a 3-year warranty for you guys out there. So this switch will give you that great peace of mind. It does bring a higher cost, but it's still much cheaper than bringing a cleanup crew for a flooded basement. So the last thing I wanted to go over is that there are switches that work better for certain applications and basins. So I'm going to go through a couple differences here, what we like to see or prefer in some switch or some bases over others, depending on what size you have out there. So like I talked about earlier, the most common sump pit out there is 18 by 30. There are switches that work better in these pits than others. I'll discuss which ones, and I'll use the wheel to kind of describe it. So what you won't want to use typically in this pit are any swing out switches. So you're going to want to keep them tight to the discharge or to your pump. So 18 inches diameter, it doesn't give you a ton of room in that pit along with the pump. So you're going to have better luck and longer runtime probably if you use some sort of float that moves vertically instead of horizontally. So there are pumps that have tethered switches hardwired into the pump, which will work, but that tether isn't very long, so it doesn't give you that much of a runtime. So in our opinion, you're better off going with a vertical switch. You'll probably get a longer runtime in reality, and it's just going to give you a better all operation. So the next pit we talked about is the 24 by 24 inch basin. So obviously you're getting about six more inches all the way around. So to be honest, you can use any switch you see on this wheel comfortably and not have to worry about much or many issues of the pump either hitting the side of the basin or getting hung up on things, because this is going to give you a solid amount of room inside that pit for things to operate and move around freely. And hopefully won't have any issues with anything hitting sidewalls, things like that. So, all right. So this concludes our webinar. So we've uploaded some handouts regarding the information presented here today. The handouts we put in here are the which switch breakdown and the sales slip for our 53 with the different switch options. So please be sure to check those out and download a copy for yourself before you leave the webinar. We appreciate your time. If you have any questions again that come up later on, you can always email it to webinars@zoeller.com. Hopefully you're able to learn a little bit of our offerings and gain a little more knowledge into what switches go in certain applications. So we appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day.